So very quickly, before I pass you over to me from the past, there's a few camera shots that didn't quite work. I thought long and hard about whether I should upload this video or not. I felt I should because it completes the story of what's going on for those people following the progress of this rebuild. So I'm going to pass you back to me from the past and enjoy. Welcome back to the workshop. I'm back on continuing with Holmside, and today we're going to start taking apart this side to look at the little end. I'll probably only show you one side unless there's anything different that occurs on the other side, but this side, having the extra arm for the lubricator drive, is the slightly different one with a bit more on it. So I'll show you this one and then you can guess what I'll be doing on the other side. To get that off, we'll take off the lubricator drive, we'll take apart the little end, take apart the big end and pull it off. There's a good chance though the motion bracket will have to come off because it probably won't bend out of the way. So starting with the big end, there's a taper pin through the nut. Now I'm not going to hit it straight off, although I probably could get away with it because there's a point on the end. But I'm going to use something soft, a bit of copper, and hit the copper. Just needs a bit of a knock to get it moving, and then it goes lovely. Incidentally, I hadn't noticed that is a cast iron bush, and there is no wear on that at all. So, score 1 for cast iron. Let's go to the little end. So first things first, get the lubricator drive out the way. I've had this on and off a few times in the last video, so I know that will come easy. We could even take that out of the way completely. So next up, we need to try and hold the little end, the pin, while we turn the nut. But that doesn't seem to be happening. I'm going to have a think. I've got a couple of ideas. The first thing I'm going to try actually is all of this has been replaced. So the nut will be doing something different. The pin will be replaced and the bush will be replaced. So I might try an easy out in that hole. And then, will that work? No, that would be going the wrong way. So I wonder, in fact, if I hold that bolt and turn the nut, that might take us the right direction. I'll be back, I need to find a spanner. So let's try again. Hopefully at some stage the bolt in the middle bottoms out and allows the big nut to turn. This big nut is excessively big to my mind, and it may well end up a lot smaller once we're done. Doesn't seem to be working so far, but I've not given up yet. Just need the right tool to hold on to it better. So the good news is it started to come out. The bad news is the nut is now on there just as tight as the bolt is still on there just as tight as the nut was. So I probably should have used a long bit of stud or something. So I had another idea. I used a cap-headed bolt. The cap head looked a bit too big, so I skimmed it down on the lathe until such times as it would pass through. Well, looking at it now, I think I didn't need to. It would have been, the thread was long enough that it didn't have to anyway. But let's get this out now. That is the pin out of the hole. Oh, it's countersunk. Can see a bit of wear there, visibly. Bronze bush this end. Which feels a bit knackered. So, yeah, that is not coming off. There's not enough flex in the rod because this cast iron bearing is too good. So, the motion bracket will have to come off again. We'll pull that off and then we can start looking at the rods. I think everything's off. Oh, we've just got to take these bolts out. We've got the nuts off. There we go. I will knock out that bearing, put a new one in. Interestingly, it looks like it had a oil reservoir slot there. I'll open that up and see what's in there. Because at the moment, there's no way of oiling that. That's interesting. So, take the bolt out. Find the right tool. Yeah, there's a big reservoir there. And there is a small hole that goes through to the bearing. So while I'm editing this, I've got to apologise because I missed the camera with a lot of what I was doing there. So you missed a bit of the information I was talking about, of the diagnosis of where we were, but I've tried to just give you the snippets where it was just in shot. So going back, let's see what the pin was like in the crosshead. Well, I think that leaves a little bit to be desired, because it should, the parallel should come right through so that the nut's not trying to squash it. But it doesn't seem to. Yeah, which then meant that the pin was loose anyway. So what we're going to do is tighten that up by maybe reaming the hole slightly bigger, make a pin that fits better, comes right through. And I had considered shouldering the end for the lubricator drive, but I think I might stick with what the style that's there, but do something slightly different again. So, new pin that's nicer through there, ream that hole slightly bigger so the parallel comes right through and is secured both sides, and the nut goes to a shoulder so it doesn't clamp the crosshead. So we'll get that done and we'll knock that bush out and rebush that with cast iron, ream it and make all this fit nicely. So I've got a slight change of plan. In actual fact, there's a little bit of a wobble, but the bearing's not too bad. I might still make a new bearing and ream it 3/8. However, I found, I decided to open this out to 3/8 where it was a bit smaller, so the pin was bottoming out on the inside of the crosshead before. All I've done is make that bigger and take a burr off the end of the pin. That's what stopped it going through the rod earlier. And just by doing that, it comes through so much more. Which then means that the other side, which is on a taper, is pulling right into the countersink, and that pin is now really tight. So I actually think the majority of the play was on the pin in the crosshead rather than the pin in the bush. So if we now reassemble this, that is now tight. I did have to put, I figured I was going to be changing the bush, so it didn't really matter. I put a slight chamfer on the inside of the bush to make sure the rod didn't, the pin didn't wedge in the bush. But that feels nice and tight now. If I make a new nut to go on there, so it looks a bit tidier, I think we'll actually be all right. Yeah, I'm going to put a hole in the cover plate on top there so the oil can get into that reservoir, and I'll make a new nut to go on here, but I think we're actually okay. So I need to see what's going on the other side to see if that's the same, but I think that's okay. I'll have to do something different with this drive pin anyway, but we'll come to that. So I'm in the process of machining down a new piece of cast iron to make a bearing for the little end of this rod, but I thought I'd give you a little insight. I got so far and I thought, oh, I better knock the old one out so that I can measure the hole and put it in. But useful tip from my point of view anyway, I'm knocking it out in the in the vise using a socket set to find a socket the right size that is bigger than the hole in the bearing but smaller than the hole in the rod. So just hold a socket against it and knock the socket through. I'll be back. So this is what's left to make the second one. I've assumed it's the same size hole in the rod, but I've deliberately left the hole in the middle undersized for what I want, so that now that it's pressed into the rod, I can run the reamer through and then it will be exactly the right size and won't have been squished by pushing it into the rod. So I'll get this done, then we can look at taking the cover off and putting the right size lubrication hole through, and then a hole in the top as well, so that you can actually get the oil into the hole, into the reservoir. So you can just see there the hole that I've drilled through from inside the reservoir, and also put a hole in the top of the reservoir so you can actually get oil into it. Now we can start looking at the pins. So we do have a slight difference between the two sides. I think I might try and reuse this pin now. Now that I've seen what the problem is, it's actually not too bad. But, like I said, I've opened up this side of the crosshead so that the pin can locate in there, and then the nut tighten up to pull it in the other side. So the other side will actually pull into that taper and not flap about. So the other problem, when it does pull in, the taper comes past the cheek of the crosshead. So what I'm going to do is, I have already marked it. I don't know if you can just see that little mark there facing us there on the taper. I pushed it all the way through and then used a little file inside to mark that position. So I'm going to set this up in the lathe and then use a parting tool to just take that down to the same diameter as the pin, because otherwise, as it goes tight, it'll pull that in, and I would need to put a countersink on the inside of the rod bearing, which I don't really want to do. So there it is, in and assembled. At the moment I've got a washer behind the nut so that it does pull tight, because the thread, it didn't seem to want to go all the way to the end of the thread. I will make some new nuts because I don't like the look of that. It's a bit too big. The one on the other side was a lot smaller. So I'll make two the same, but annoyingly, the pin the other side could do with being a little bit longer on the parallel section, because it didn't quite make the cheek. I wonder if the other side's been remade at some point. But you can see where it's all a bit rubbish, the thread there. That's because the pin's been doing that in the loose hole and worn the thread away. So it definitely wants, I've already opened that and reamed the cheek the same as I did the other side. I just need to make a new pin that's a little bit longer on the 3/8, turn it down to a thread so that it sits in the hole, locates in there, but pulls tight, and then make two new nuts. So I have just finished putting the motion brackets back on, and let's take a look, because I think it's looking pretty good. I've still got to work out the pin, make a new pin for driving the lubricator. Worst case scenario, I could just put a 2BA bolt in like was in there before, but I think we can do better in one way or another. But let's just have a look. So I cannot make that move at all. So I think that's going to sound a lot better going round. The other side's the same. So I've still got to sort out the lubricator drive, make a pin for the end of that. It has come out a little bit further than it was before, so I might need to put a spacer behind the top fastening up here, or I could, I see it's got a bit of a joggle or a cutout behind. Maybe I could, between that drive and there, put a bit of a bend out, maybe. We'll see. I might open out that slot to make it parallel again, where it's had a bit of wear. But we'll deal with that with the lubricator, because I have a plan to make the lubricator last longer as well. I think we're going to make a new pot, but we'll deal with that separately. So all that's left on the outside is this gradient pin. Now, I've been thinking about this. If I just demonstrate something, if I roll that off the back, so the little bit of movement we've got there, the reason that pin can wear so much is that amount of side play. Look how much stress it puts on that. Go from above. You see, if you made a nice fitting pin through there, it's just going to go bad anyway. I do wonder if that's an excessive amount of side play. I will measure it in a moment and then let you know. But that's not part of my remit to sort out. It probably wants it for going around some tighter bends. But that means I can't really do too much here because it'll just go again. The way everything else is tight, it sort of stands reason it was good, but it's gone bad pretty quick anyway. So it's just over 1/8 of an inch, maybe 4mm, something like that, of side float. I'm not sure if that's too much or too little. I haven't really done much 7 1/4 when it comes to that kind of stuff. So, but I'm leaving that for now. That's not my concern at this moment in time. So next up, next time, we'll take a look at the valve gear, all the eccentrics, and see what we can tighten up there and make all that a bit nicer. I don't think it needs too much, just a little tweak here and there. But for now, thanks for watching. I do hope you've enjoyed. I hope you're enjoying what's going on with this, and I'll be back soon. So, take care.